The sun hovered low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert sands. Pharaoh Neferu stood on the steps of his palace in Thebes, watching as the sky darkened. Today marked the first solar eclipse in decades, a rare celestial event tied to the gods. But Neferu's heart felt heavy, for the high priestess of Hathor had brought troubling news from the temple. Ancient scrolls uncovered deep within the temple walls foretold a prophecy, a warning of an approaching darkness. As the moon began to slide across the sun, a chill swept through the air. Neferu turned to his advisor, Vizier Rahatep. "Summon the court. The prophecy is upon us." The great doors of the palace opened, and within the golden halls of the throne room, the pharaoh gathered his trusted advisors. The high priestess, shrouded in linen robes, stepped forward. "Pharaoh, the time has come. The Shet-u, demons of shadow imprisoned in the Duat, will soon rise to claim the living world." A hush fell over the room. Neferu, though a man of reason, knew the weight of such ancient warnings. "How do we stop them?" The priestess raised her staff, its head shaped like the sacred cow of Hathor. "We must find the sons and daughters of the sun, the only ones who can wield the power of the gods." Neferu's eyes narrowed. He had heard of this ancient order, warriors of legend who had long faded into myth. But if the prophecy was true, the survival of Egypt depended on finding them before the eclipse ended. Far from the pharaoh's palace, in a small village nestled along the Nile, a young woman named Isidora practiced her swordplay. Her eyes were fierce, her movements swift, yet she had never been a soldier. She fought only to defend her people from the occasional raiders who preyed upon the villages. As she trained, the sky darkened. Isidora glanced up, her heart pounding as the eclipse began. Something stirred deep within her. A whisper on the wind, a call she could not ignore. She had felt this presence before in her dreams. Visions of fire and shadow, of battles long forgotten. But today the feeling was stronger, more real. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the village. It was a man in royal armor, the crest of the pharaoh shining on his chest. "Isidora," he called, his voice urgent. "I come on behalf of Pharaoh Neferu. You are needed." Isidora lowered her sword, confused. "Needed? By the pharaoh?" The man stepped forward, his gaze intense. "The demons of the Duat are awakening. You are one of the last of the sons and daughters of the sun. You must come with me." Isidora and the royal messenger journeyed to Thebes, the great city looming ahead of them like a vision from another world. As they approached, the city's massive walls cast long shadows in the fading light of the eclipse. Inside the palace, Isidora was ushered into the throne room, where Pharaoh Neferu awaited her. The pharaoh's gaze was sharp, and though he wore the crown of Egypt, there was a humility in his voice when he spoke. "You are the last of the ancient order, Isidora. The gods have chosen you to help stop the darkness that is coming." Isidora shook her head. "I am no warrior of legend. I am just a village girl." The high priestess stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "You are more than you know. The blood of the ancient warriors flows through your veins. You have the power to summon the fire of Sekhmet, to command the elements themselves. Only with your help can we find the others and stop the Shet-u." Reluctant but with no choice, Isidora agreed to aid the pharaoh. She knew the legends well, but never did she imagine she was a part of them. The weight of her destiny pressed heavily on her, yet something deep within stirred, a forgotten power beginning to awaken. The next morning, Isidora and a small group of soldiers set out into the desert. Their destination, the ancient city of Akhe, where the first of the sons and daughters of the sun was said to reside. The journey was long and treacherous, the heat of the desert unforgiving. But as they traveled, Isidora began to feel the pull of her destiny growing stronger. The desert stretched out endlessly before them, and yet she could sense something hidden beneath the sands, an ancient presence waiting to be uncovered. As the sun began to set, they arrived at the ruins of Akhe. The city was long abandoned, its once great temples reduced to crumbling stone. But among the ruins, a single figure stood, cloaked in shadow. Isidora's heart raced. This was no ordinary man. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and in his hand, he held a staff of polished obsidian. "You've come," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness. "The prophecy has begun." The figure revealed himself to be Khepri, the guardian of fire, the first of the sons and daughters of the sun. He had lived for centuries, bound to the flame of Sekhmet, waiting for the moment the prophecy would be fulfilled. His power was ancient, and when he raised his hand, the fire roared to life, casting light over the ruins. Kepri's eyes settled on Isidora. You are the one the gods have chosen to lead us. But you must embrace the fire within you if you are to stop the darkness. Isidora felt a surge of power coursing through her veins, but it was wild, untamed. She had never known the extent of her abilities, and now, standing before a man who had mastered them for centuries, she realized just how unprepared she was. But there was no time for doubt. The ground beneath them trembled, and from the shadows of the ruins, the first of the Shet-u emerged, dark, writhing creatures with eyes like burning embers. The Shet-u attacked without warning, their dark forms slithering across the sands like living shadows. Isidora barely had time to react before Kepri leaped into battle, his staff blazing with fire. He fought with precision and grace, each strike of his staff sending waves of flame crashing against the demons. But the Shet-u were relentless, and even Kepri's fire could not hold them at bay forever. Isidora, heart pounding, felt the power inside her struggling to break free. She raised her hands, willing the fire to come forth, but nothing happened. Doubt crept into her mind. Could she truly lead this battle? Kepri's voice cut through the chaos. Do not fear the fire, Isidora. Let it consume you, and it will obey. With a cry of defiance, Isidora focused, her fear giving way to fury. Flames erupted from her hands, a wild, untamed force that scorched the earth and sent the Shet-u scattering into the shadows. The battle left the ruins of Ake smoldering, but the Shet-u were defeated for now. Kepri, impressed by Isidora's raw power, offered her guidance. You have the potential to be the greatest of us, but you must learn to control the fire. Only then can you face the darkness that is coming. As they traveled back to Thebes, Kepri told Isidora of the others, the remaining sons and daughters of the sun, each with their own elemental powers. Together, they would be Egypt's last line of defense against the Shet-u. But Isidora was still unsure. How could she, a village girl, lead warriors of such power? And what of the growing darkness inside her? Was it truly a gift from the gods, or something far more dangerous? Back in Thebes, rumors spread of dark forces gathering. The pharaoh's court was no longer safe, as whispers of betrayal echoed through the halls. A nobleman named Nacht, ambitious and cunning, had grown suspicious of Neferu's alliance with the ancient warriors. Nacht believed that the pharaoh's reliance on myth and magic was a sign of weakness, and he had begun making alliances of his own. In secret, Nacht communed with the Lord of Shadows, a being of immense power imprisoned in the Duat. The Lord promised Nacht dominion over Egypt in exchange for his help in breaking the barrier between worlds, allowing the Shet-u to fully invade. As the sun began to rise once more, a new darkness loomed on the horizon, and the battle for Egypt had only just begun. Isidora sensed the shift in the air. Though they had won their first battle, the true war had yet to begin. The Shet-u were growing stronger with each passing day, and she knew that Nacht's treachery would soon reveal itself. The journey ahead would not only be a battle of swords and fire, but of loyalty and trust. The court of the pharaoh was filled with allies and enemies alike, and Isidora would have to navigate the treacherous politics of Thebes while honing her powers. And deep within her, the fire of Sekhmet burned brighter than ever, a constant reminder of the great responsibility she now carried. The fate of Egypt, and perhaps the world, rested on her shoulders. Pharaoh Neferu stood alone on the balcony of his palace, gazing out at the horizon. The eclipse had passed, but the darkness remained, lingering like a shadow over his kingdom. He knew that the time of the Shet-u had come, and the battle that would decide the fate of Egypt was fast approaching. But Neferu had faith in Isidora and the ancient warriors. The vigil must be kept, he whispered, his eyes narrowing, for the gods have not abandoned us yet. To find out how Isidora and her companions face the rising darkness, and if Nacht's betrayal will lead to Egypt's downfall, don't miss Part 2, The War of Shadows.